Hi, my name is Monica Varela. I am from Colombia, and I am Vice President of Lands for Life, which is RARE's program focusing on regenerative agriculture. I am delighted today to present to you another RARE conversation. RARE conversations are when we speak with a range of experts from fields of sustainability, environment, and conservation. And today, I am pleased to welcome Ryland Engelhart. Thank you for leading a wonderful movement that makes us fall in love with the soil and with regenerative agriculture. As a way of introduction, why don't you tell us, what do you love about being Ryland Engelhart?
Thank you, Monica. Thank you, Rare, for hosting me and inviting me to have this conversation. Let's see, what do I love about being Ryland Engelhart? Um, I love that I come from amazing parents and that I get to be a continuation of their love and service. And I'm grateful that I get to be a father of two young boys, Rumi Forrest Engelhart and Phoenix Engelhart. And yeah, that I get to be someone who's doing something that I love. And I've been doing it for over 10 years, and I'm still inspired and passionate to be able to be a voice and an advocate and a promoter and an inspiration around regeneration and the regeneration of our precious planet. So I'm super grateful to be here. Thank you.
Welcome, welcome. Ryland, tell us about Kiss the Ground and what made you become exactly an advocate for regenerative farming.
Yeah, so everything, my life is obviously, I think all of our lives are a continuum from moment to moment that creates, where we are and what we do. And Kiss the Ground really came to me through a few awakening moments. One was when I was 19 years old. I was sitting in a ceremonial context, and I had a deep experience of communion with Mother Earth, with the spirit of this beautiful, precious planet. And in that moment, I was called to, just found myself weeping on my knees in gratitude to be invited and asked for support, protection, service, care to Mother Earth. And at that moment, I was sort of dealing with, what is my life for? What is my purpose? What can I make? How can I make a difference? And, that led me to opening a restaurant chain called Cafe Gratitude and Gracias Madre, which was a plant-based restaurant chain in California that was all about serving healthy, whole food with a spirit of love and gratitude in our hearts, and touching people and inviting people into that health is wealth, and inviting people to, the fullness of the present moment, when we are recognizing all that there is to be grateful for in each moment. And so, that journey of Cafe Gratitude, service, and, bringing, millions of, over 15 years, millions of people delicious, healthy food with an attitude of gratitude led me to New Zealand, where I got to hear a gentleman by the name of Graham Sate speak about soil health on a panel that was called "Can Human Beings Sustain Life on Planet Earth?" And the 5 out of the 6 experts said no, and that our future is very grim and bleak. And Graham Sate then expressed a communication and something that I'd never heard before. And I'd never had heard that plants, microorganisms, and soil could be this mechanism, this catalyst to balancing the climate, that we could take a lot of the excess atmospheric carbon that's been released, bring that back down, put it underground through trees, grasses, plants, and through our agricultural system. And as a food entrepreneur, that idea was the biggest idea that I had ever come to in my life. Was like, wow, the way we eat, the way we farm, could actually be a solution, not only to the regeneration of our human health, but actually the health of our planet. And in that moment of watching that panel discussion called "Can Human Beings Sustain Life on Planet Earth?" It became clear to me this idea of regeneration, and that regeneration was possible. And that in that moment, I saw not only my own sort of awakening awareness of a complete paradigm shift, but I also saw sort of internally this moment of everyone, like that this became a collective new normal of understanding around planet Earth. And, over time, I understand that this is not a new conversation. It's not but it's a consciousness or an awareness that we are integral and a part of the living system, nature, Earth, the planet, and that we can actually not be what we sort of inherited as a view that we're destructive, and that our agriculture degrades life, degrades ecosystem, degrades soil, degrades biodiversity. But we actually can be a keystone species that actually creates a trophic cascade for more life based on our interaction and our interaction with nature in specificity, in relationship to how we manage land and agriculture. And so this idea was so big and so, moving and so awe-inspiring, and so gave me purpose and a way forward, that I was in New Zealand. I came back and I started gathering people in my home. I was running a restaurant in Venice, California, and I would start, basically bringing people from the restaurant who I could see maybe had shared interests, values. And, we started building what was a working group, a small group of committed people in my living room, that then became my garage, that then became a 501c3 nonprofit, with a mission to give people that very experience that I had, 11 years ago in New Zealand, to awaken their consciousness that regeneration is possible. Because I saw my own sort of apathy and depression and cynicism about the future of the world was such a barrier to me even seeing any way forward, and to be able to give people a paradigm of possibility, that there is a way forward, and there's lots of ways that we could, play a role in that possibility. That became my inspiration of how to awaken that message to the largest audience possible. And that's what we started to do as a 501c3 nonprofit, where we focus on storytelling, education, and advocacy for the expansion and the growth of the regenerative agriculture movement here in the United States and around the world.
Ryland, I love the name, Kiss the Ground. It is amazing. Where does it come from?
Kiss the ground, yes. Well, yeah, it comes from Rumi, the poet, who has been a sort of family luminary to my family. I think I shared this earlier. I named my son Rumi because his words from 700 years ago still resonate with this most intrinsic, beautiful, they sort of evade the mentality of the mind, and they just pierce the heart in such potent ways. And so Rumi said, "Let the beauty you love be all that you do. There's hundreds of ways to kneel and kiss the ground." And so, yeah, we were originally going to be called Soillutions as an organization. And I'm so glad we didn't go down that. We would have turned into a laundry detergent brand or something. But yeah, no, Kiss the Ground, yeah, comes from Rumi. And it really is, my prayer and my hope and my wish is that Kiss the Ground becomes a collective way of being, in the human psyche of, as human beings, we understand that we come from, and all of life comes from the earth that we walk upon. And so we remember to continuously and actively express our love for the earth, in in all the ways, and remembering that through, may we remember to, just like may we remember to kiss our mothers, may we remember to kiss our big mother.
And it is a great way to remember everybody that we need to fall in love with our souls, right? With the souls that provide us the food. I love it.
Yes.
You were mentioning that one of your areas of work is storytelling, and storytelling is central to both of our organization as a way to communicate our work. What is one of your favorite stories of a farmer adopting regenerative agriculture? You have many stories, but which one do you really love?
Yeah, many stories of regeneration. I think I'll just go like really close to home. Right here, I'm speaking from Fillmore, California, where I live. Me and my wife homestead next to my sister and her family, where they raised their 4 kids, her and her husband Elias. And it's a farm called Engelhart Farm. And actually, we can put it in the chat, but it's actually the most recent story that Kiss the Ground just released on our platforms. And it's called Stories of Regeneration, featuring Molly Engelhart. And that's my sister. And, again, I said earlier that we are a continuum that, lead and bleed into so many parts of life. And, I know that I played a little bit of a role in my advocacy and education and passion for soil that led her down this road of buying a farm as a vegan chef, and realizing that as a vegan chef she was trying to save the world, and yet she was throwing thousands and thousands of pounds of vegetable trimmings into the garbage because there was no composting system in Los Angeles. And so she took it upon herself to say, all right, I'm going to be the solution for this problem that I'm a part of. And so she bought a farm, and basically is a self-taught regenerative farmer here, running 17 acres in Fillmore, California. And we just produced a really beautiful short film on her journey, her story, her life. And so sorry to be so nepotistic in promoting my sister, but yeah, she's a beautiful force to be reckoned with, and she's an amazing woman, and I admire her deeply. And her journey and what she's accomplished in the last 5 years is extraordinary. She's created this epic 17-acre farm that has fruits, vegetables, citrus, coffee, olives, micro dairy. I mean, producing all different kinds of things. A CSA program, we could put that in the chat. If you live in Southern California, you can can get a box of regeneratively grown produce delivered to your door. It's called Engelhart Farm, engelhart.com. So that'll be my answer for that question. Thank you so much.
And that's not really easy, because farmers see other farmers doing different things, right? Sticking more to conventional agriculture, and it's difficult for farmers to take the decision to go into regenerative agriculture without really knowing the results they're going to obtain. So I think that every farmer that goes into regenerative agriculture is like a hero, right?
Yes, I mean it's like the hero's journey of the Joseph Campbell going into the darkness, the unknown. There's very little examples. There's very little neighbors. There's very little people around that have a proven track record. But yet there's this mystery, or this mystique, or this possibility that is future. I've seen it. Intuitively, intrinsically, it probably feels right. I'm doing these chemicals. I'm kind of doing this, mechanical mentality agriculture that doesn't feel, but yet it just seems like the trap that I'm in. And yet that's the sort of prevailing narrative of what is the way, the productive, the future. And so, yeah, I mean, the mentality is the biggest, block, I think. Obviously there's many blocks, but that is definitely the anyone who makes that heroic change is absolutely a hero. And that's why, for me, you know, I started Kiss the Ground, and really all I was doing was how can I give voice to these heroic human beings who are making this different choice that adds so much value to our lives, to, you know, the nourishment of communities through food, but also the nourishment of soil and landscape and ecology and, you know, water systems and water cleanliness. And, you know, it's just yeah, I love that there is, you know, I was responding to an email earlier, and I was just describing that the possibility that regeneration is possible, and it's actually being demonstrated in these, you know, scalable, you know, sizable projects around the world. And it's not easy, and it's many barriers, but it's kind of like the Four Noble Truths. Like, we know that there is a path, we know there's a problem, we know there's a path, and there is a life that actually is out beyond, you know, all the barriers. And, you know, it's just our life to keep, you know, I'm choosing, my life is to be a voice and a promoter and an advocate and a catalyst for the belief that this is possible, such that from a consumer desire and from a farmer, you know, ability to apply, there's enough evidence in the collective idea sphere, such that, you know, we have this flow of people going in this direction. And, you know, there's people doing different versions of this all over the world. I'm just one small part of a movement that is small and mighty and growing, and it is is happening all over the world.
What can we do with those farmers that are more resistant, that still resist? How do you tackle that? What are the help that you're providing to overcome some of the barriers that they have?
It's a great question. I think one, you know, Rare has amazing programs that are really, you know, looking at the, you know, the psychology of you know, change, and I think you guys are doing a great job. You know, just throw the ball back to you and say thank you for what you're doing there around, you know, really looking at the behavioral science of human beings. That, you know, it's to change is not just like giving the cover crop seed or the piece of equipment or, you know, the subsidy. It really is a shift in consciousness of like this is possible, and understanding, you know, all the pieces coming together. So again, what I would say is I always want to have the right messenger. You know, I'm not the right messenger for most farmers because, you know, I don't have a track record of succeeding in, you know, having a farm, converting it to regenerative, or being a regenerative farmer. You know, that's not my role. But, you know, as someone who's a connector and, you know, creating this mycelium network of all the different people in this regenerative world, I'm always threading and bringing people together. You know, you know, I've kind of had a little bit of resistance. Like, is my role in life just really like connecting people? Is that an okay role? But the way that I'm sort of contextualizing it is really, you know, one of our greatest sources of suffering in life is feeling disconnected, whether it's from nature, from, you know, some higher power, some greater life. And so if I can play a role of being, you know, connecting the right ear to the right lips or the right voice, and I can bring those connections, you know, we've been able to do that, where I'll meet a landowner who has a huge project, and, you know, their context is grazing or dairy or, you know, orchards. And then I look to, you know, who do I know that is the greatest, has had the greatest success in training farmers of that context, of that cultural, you know, perspective, and is going to get their challenge, speak to their challenge, and then speak to, you know, the possibility beyond that challenge. And so, you know, my role is, you know, listening, hearing the challenge, hearing, you know, where the barriers are, and then finding the right voice and educator to connect that person with, such that they can, remove those barriers or overcome those.
We all know that the challenge is huge and that we need to scale as fast as possible. But I would like to ask you, what is the value of small steps?
The value of small steps. Well, I think that,
toward
yeah,
regenerative agriculture. I mean, this is so overwhelming that I think that we overlook small steps and the things that we can do ourselves. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's I think it's a beautiful question, and something that we all have to look in the mirror around. I know that I look in the mirror, I'm oftentimes chasing the big thing. And if I don't make something big happen, I'm not feeling I don't feel alive. And yet I think there's an opportunity, which is a much more sort of there's I think if I look at the things that are successful in my life, it's because there's been consistent little disciplined steps around taking that action. I'm going to use a silly example, but like I saw my mom has no teeth in her mouth, my dad has really bad teeth, and I've been really diligent about flossing my teeth, like religion, like and I have really, healthy teeth because I've been disciplined and take that small little step, even if I fall asleep at night on my couch and I come back to, I'll floss before I get to bed. And so I think, anywhere we have successful outcomes in life, it's where we've been able to take consistent small steps. I mean, I think all behavioral, I mean, again, back to your guys's, work. I mean, small disciplined steps, taking action every day in one particular area, and then feeling the fulfillment of that those small little steps turn into weeks, months, and years of a development. And then there's a level of confidence and authority there that can then compel those next big actions, and the willingness to take new steps. So I think I mean, again, I can just speak for myself within Kiss the Ground. I've been having conversations about regenerative agriculture. I've thousands and thousands and thousands of conversations over 10 years. And that's led to the ability to communicate about it pretty well. And that's led to the ability to have, some authority. And it's led me to, building an organization and, inspiring filmmakers to make movies. And, again, the consistent thing was, all right, what am I inspired about? And I'm inspired, and I'm speaking and taking action of that inspiration, and then finding people that are willing and excited to listen and continue to have this conversation. Because an environment where there's no listening for what you're talking about, you will fail. I will fail. In an environment where you're speaking a language that there's no listening for, it's going to fall on deaf ears, literally and figuratively. And so, we have to find people who we get ignited, and they're ignited when we're having these conversations. Otherwise, we'll I mean, again, my experience, maybe there's some just, heroic, soul gunslingers, but I think, nothing happens in a vacuum. For sure, all the success that we've had has been in community, in team, in group, and having a collective, being able to stoke and feed a fire with, I had a little bit of kindling, and, that collective kindling brought a flame, and that turns into these bigger projects and opportunities, and, a movement grows from there.
Okay, now I have a round of lighting questions for you. So the first one is, what is a fact about soil that surprises people?
a fact about soil that surprises people. I think people still don't get that soil is alive. It's alive. It's alive. There's more biodiversity underneath the ground. I think 25% of the biodiversity on the planet is organisms in the soil, and that in a handful of healthy soil, there's more organisms than human beings. Yeah, I've heard people say that more human beings than exist on the planet right now. So billions of organisms. So yeah, soil is alive, and we forget that. This is a great reference. So imagine soil is a living thing, just like a coral reef. Imagine if we drained the coral reef and we dragged metal discs across that coral reef, then we put the water back in on that coral reef, and then we said, okay, grow something. It would be a complete, but that soil is an intact system that we're literally tilling, and then we expect life to be able to, happen through that totally mangled infrastructure. And it just, over time, it doesn't work. Yes, we can synthetically induce things to grow, but over time, we're going to have desertification, and we're going to have no more life.
That's a fact, and I don't think that many of us are aware of that. That's a very good way to explain that. Well, what's your favorite vegan or vegetarian dish?
Favorite vegan or vegetarian dish? So probably people don't know, I was vegan vegan and vegetarian until I was 35 years old and ate my first hamburger at 35. I'm 43 now. Really, soil and regenerative agriculture shifted my whole perspective on veganism to now eating meat. But my favorite vegan meal would be, I'm pretty classic. Sauteed vegetables, maybe some beans, and then a really amazing garlic tahini dressing. That's I've been eating that in Cafe Gratitude and at home for, I don't know, for my whole life.
Sounds delicious. Fascinating country or region you've traveled to?
Fascinating country or region that I've traveled to. The thing that's coming to mind was India, South India, in the Moon God region of South India, where I got to visit a friend, Shankar, who's running a small biodynamic farming training school for farmers, and getting to come from a life US-centric to South India and seeing small scale farmers in India, how they're doing biodynamic agriculture. Very fascinating, and a whole different life.
Last question. When are you coming to Colombia?
Ah, wow. Trick question. I would love to. I would be so honored, and I've never been, and I haven't actually been. I've been to South America in the Amazon, but I have not been to Colombia, and I would be honored and love to come and see the work that Rare is doing. But yeah, so I would say I'd love to come in the next 3 years.
We'll be very happy to have you here. Ryland, now we have 25 minutes to interact with our audience. But before we transition over to questions, I want to point out a few things to our guests. First, learn about Kiss the Ground and their work on their website, kisstheground.com. I'll learn more about my program, Lands for Life, and how we are applying behavioral science to transform agriculture in Colombia. Visit rare.org and sign up for Rare's e-updates so you don't miss our conversations. Stephanie is sharing these links in the chat. And now, Steph, let's see what the audience wants to know about Ryland.
Thank you, Monica, for this conversation.
Yes.
Thank you.
So our first question, it comes from Rosina. As you know, the average farmer's age is in the late 50s and many are retiring every day. How do you think we can help young farmers, including myself, who are passionate about regenerative farming but don't have the capital to start a farm or continue farming?
Great question. So I think part of the question was, how do we get young people interested in becoming farmers? And then the second question is, where does how can capital be brought into making this more feasible or possible for young farmers? So, and again, I imagine resources in different places are very different. So I'm not exactly sure where that question's coming from. Stephanie, do we know if that's a...
I don't have a region here. From Canada.
There's some amazing allies that have done incredible work in Canada. I think their organization is called the New Farm, or Farmers for Climate, and they are advocates, advocate graduates of Kiss the Ground's programs. They're farmers, and they're actually building an educational center for training young farmers in regenerative agriculture. And I know they pioneered one of the largest congressional allocations of government funding into regenerative agriculture. And because I'm not from Canada, I don't have that many more details, but they are, they would be a great place to start in Canada as far as, best resources for young farmers and funding for young farmers in Canada.
Great.
John Rulak tuning in with Ray Archuleta, Alejandro Carrillo, Regen leaders featured in the Common Ground film. Very cool. Amazing. They just visited they were just in Colombia helping producers there. That's amazing. Monica, we gotta get you connected to Ray Archuleta and Alejandro Carrillo.
Fantastic.
This is great. I will go to the next question. One question I had when I saw the documentary was why regenerative ag isn't being adopted more quickly at scale, given its enhanced yields and many benefits.
Yes, the question many people ask, if markets follow capital and cash, why, if it's more profitable, it should be the way that it's all going. Yeah, I mean, there's so many layers of yeah, I mean, again, we've talked about consciousness and the education. There's, it's not just about how, what the facts are. It's really a belief and a commitment and an understanding of your context. So I would say to make it sort of short, there is a huge adoption, and I'll give a fact that really helps amplify that adoption. Since the Kiss the Ground film came out, or as it was being produced, there's a group called Understanding Ag that is out of the US that was featured in the Kiss the Ground film and also the Common Ground film. The farmer by the name of Gabe Brown and Alan Williams, and their consulting group has gone from thousands of acres to now 32 million acres are in transitional, they're consulting on 32 million acres in the US and over 200 million worldwide. And if we think about that at scale, if we think about organic agriculture, it's taken almost 50 years to get to 1% of the US acreage under organic management. And what Understanding Ag with that 32 million, that's almost 5 times that organic in the last 3 to 5 years. So it is scaling. Regenerative agriculture, I think, because there's a lot of practitioners that's being farmer led and they're succeeding, and farmers are listening to the success of other farmers versus an industry or a standard saying you have to get to this before you can get this premium. Well, that there is obviously attraction, and people having a premium makes a difference. I think having it be farmer led, which the regenerative ag movement has been farmer led in its practitionership and in its scale, is gonna prove to be, or it's already proving to be much more scalable and growing much faster than even the organic food movement, which again, I'm a huge fan and supporter of the organic food movement. And they're completely sistered in their approach and intention.
I would like to add something to that. We found a
Please.
study by the World Bank and the center, the International Center for Agricultural, for Tropical Agriculture. And what they found is that actually lack of training and information, at least in countries like Colombia, is the main barrier for the adoption of regenerative agriculture. So the work that you are doing, Ryland, and getting farmers to know about these practices, and even though they are simple and they may take time, they bring results, is something important. So information and training is also a barrier for farmers to adopt this at scale.
Yeah, I mean, again, I've spent so much time just trying to be a candle lighting, another candle. So really, as individuals, what we can do is, everywhere we go, wherever we're buying food, we can start asking for regenerative produced food, and we start to then having conversations and get into the nitty gritty and start talking to farmers and see what their berries are, and then see if we could be a connector to resources that they may not have. And because that's oftentimes farmers don't have the time to go research and find a new path, but we as advocates or citizens, eaters, consumers, we can take an active role. I think Wendell Berry said eating is an agricultural act. And so, so is opening our mouths and communicating new information. It can be the very thing that turns someone on, that leads them to, doing a little bit more research, that then leads them down the path of in a new direction. And I know that, Kiss the Ground has been doing a lot of that work, and there's so much more room for continued growth and being advocates for turning people on, whether it's consumers, brands, and farmers as well.
All right, next question. This one's directed to Ryland, but I think it applies to both of you, from Muhammad, and I think he's from Spain. What is your best suggestion for smallholder farmers who are vulnerable due to climate change impact in marginal environments, such as North Africa?
Yeah, I don't feel that confident to really give a prescribed, prescribed result for that, because it's such a concept I don't know that much about. I know that, diversity, perennials, tree crops, obviously, as the climate changes, and I know this from my own experience here in Southern California, where we have a lot of desertified land under, that is under, tree canopy and almost no ground cover. Microclimates affect the macroclimate, and microclimates also are more resilient to, hotter temperatures. So I would say, we have to have a more diversified system and more perennials in a system and smaller farms. But I would say I'd pass it to Monica to maybe get some of your experience in Colombia, if that could be relevant to North Africa.
I think that one aspect is organic matter. I think that it doesn't matter how much fertilizers you put into the soil if there's not enough organic matter. So our experience has been how to support farmers to be able to produce more and more compost. so that they can restructure the soil, they can put more organic matter in the soil, and then they will start seeing productivity. I would say that that's the main take that I would have from the experience in Colombia.
And I'll just shout out, John Rulak is on this chat, and I know he has a program where he's working with farmers in Malawi doing agroforestry systems. It's called ARC, and John Rulak, put your resources that are wanting to get into resilient farming systems for smallholders in Africa, and the examples that you're using. So that might be helpful to also answer the question.
All right. Next question is from Rob. Has the impact of the Netflix movie subsided? And what has been the result? What's been the result, and what has the planet done since the movie first aired?
Yeah, so 10 million people have seen the film, 1 billion impressions around the film. We know that some of the largest food companies in the world are using that film to educate, on the direction that they want to go. And, those could be high and mighty false claims and just aspirational marketing. But back to what I already stated, which is that understanding ag, who I know and trust that they are legitimate, doing the best in guiding farmers to transition in successful ways to regenerative. The fact that they're now consulting on 200 million acres around the world, they acknowledge that wouldn't be happening without this, bloom of awareness that came about with the film. So I would say those would be some of the metric points that we observe to show, impact. And there's many more, but that I would start with that.
Awesome. Okay, next question from Juan. Several persons have described benefits of regenerative agriculture they have witnessed, but some scientists claim that these benefits have not been demonstrated through publications in peer-reviewed journals. Have you talked with scientists on this? And what opinions do you have about the statement of some scientists?
I mean, my snide response is that science is bought and sold. So, again, I know that that's a cheap statement, and there's so much, I have so much reverence for the discipline of science and what science can illuminate and reveal. But I know that science in so many factions and so many industries, you pay for the results that you want to share. And so science and big ag and big industry doesn't want a resilient, self-reliant system that requires less and less inputs from outside sources, because that means less and less, business for seed and chemical companies. So it's the same reason why we went through a pandemic and we didn't teach the world to get healthy and strengthen our immune system. We just said wait for the saving grace from pharma. And so I think that science it's sad, but science is bought and sold, and we get the results that the most money goes into and behind, and that is big industry has the biggest stick.
Juan, I would like to add something to that. For us, evidence is key for creating social proof. So social proof will move to social pressure. So we need a lot of farmers to get convinced about the benefits of sustainable farming, of regenerative farming. And we have seen a lot of empirical evidence, a lot of testimonials of farmers saying that they are actually seeing the benefits. But we partnered with the Colombian Research Institute, and we analyzed 5 farms. Those farms grow cacao, and it was a short study. We have been only developing Land for Life for the past 2 years, and we compare the plots where we were implementing the regenerative practices with control plots. And what we saw in a very short period of time was a much better development of the tree. The branches, the stem, the leaves were different, were better developed and more uniform. Also, the fruit, the pod of the cacao was very different. And in terms of the economics for the farmers, they were able to save in chemical inputs. So the cost for production reduced in almost 50%, and their productivity improved as compared to the standard in Colombia. So we are trying to gather scientific evidence because we know that empirical evidence needs to go hand in hand in order to convince farmers that could be much more adverse to taking risk and to ambiguity. So we need to create to gather that type of evidence in order to make sure that regenerative agriculture makes sense for the farmer, not only from the environmental perspective, but also from the economic perspective.
Yeah, and I'll just get off my high horse on my last statement and say, I also believe that scientific research is key to have a mass shift in trust and adoption of regenerative agriculture. And in fact, the sequel to Kiss the Ground is called Common Ground, and it's coming out in theaters this fall. And it has a gentleman by the name of Jonathan Lundgren, who is taking that on. He's a scientist that came from the USDA, and now he's independently working to study 1,000 farms in the US over the last couple of years to show, the profitability, the biodiversity, the carbon sequestration, the profitability, the water holding capacity, really like very clear, evidence for, farms that are doing regenerative agriculture are, there's more profit, there's more life, there's less inputs, and it leads to these outcomes that there's, all this talk about. So if someone could, put Jonathan Lundgren and the Igdices Blue Dasher Farms. We can put that in the chat so people can check that out. But there's a lot. He's doing a really beautiful, amazing study to bring a lot of evidence to the regenerative agriculture is scientifically sound.
Do you think agrotourism is a good way for farmers to share their work and make supplemental income?
Absolutely. It's it's actually the next phase of my personal life is agroforestry and regenerative agriculture. I'm moving to Texas with my sister to set up a place called Sovereignty Ranch, which is going to have tiny homes and an event center, and it's an absolute way to be able to we thrive when we can share what we're passionate about. If we live in isolation about what we're doing, we don't get to have this circulation of energy. And so when farmers get to be able to show what they're doing and get to share it with other people and turn other people on, not only is it fulfilling and it gives them excitement about what they're doing, but it absolutely provides another layer of income, which we know that the profit margins of farming is so narrow and thin. So absolutely, there's a huge opportunity for agrotourism for farmers, especially in the culture of Airbnb-ing becomes now a new thing that people don't just go to a hotel, they go and find a cool place that they can stay. I think that's becoming, globally relevant. And I think that's a really, really great opportunity and future growth for farmers and regenerative farmers, because I think people want to eat that food and they want to learn about this better way that we can steward the earth.
And I also think that it is a way to allow people to get acquainted to regenerative farming. People living in the cities that can go to a farm where regenerative farming is implemented can see firsthand the benefits of it and can relate to that. So I think that agrotourism not only is economic benefit for the farmers, but also for people who are not really that directly connected with agriculture and can see how this really affects their lives.
And I'll just add one more thought, which is just, I think there's, at least from my worldview, there's in the US, we're so, we think food should be cheap. I think we have some of the cheapest food in the world per capita in the US. And I think when we actually go and visit a farm and we see the work and what it takes and all that goes into creating a meal or a tomato or a jug of milk, we have more reverence for it, we have more appreciation for it, and we feel better about spending our money on it versus just this total disconnection of like, $12 for something that it takes energy, it takes effort. There's a lot that goes into producing healthy food, and I think we as a culture need to wake up to that and be more appreciative and allow for what we eat is our medicine. What we either pay for it now or we pay for it later, and if we invest in healthy food, then we can live longer, healthier lives. So I think there's a greater awareness for educating folks on valuing food and being able to put more money behind good food.
Great. Okay, we have one last question that we have time for. So this is from Kevin. What are the largest infrastructure challenges to scaling regenerative ag?
I imagine it's different in different places. Of course it is, but I would say in the US, one of the largest challenges is there is no more small infrastructure. There is no more grain mills. There is no more small, animal butcher processing. Everything has gotten huge. And so there's only a certain amount of, food types that you can grow where there's going to be a processing, a milling, a market for. We're kind of locked into these big commodity items. And so regenerative agriculture is about diversification. So there's a definite need in, that large scale infrastructure of milling, processing, foods that are not the main commodities. So I'll say that, and love Monica to give her perspective too.
I would say that more in terms that infrastructure is consumer preference. I think that what really can help regenerative agriculture scaling is consumers demanding for this type of food, not only for the planet, but for our own health, right?
Yeah, and I'll just say one other thing, which was just, it was brought up earlier. What's the scale or the growth of the regenerative movement in the last few years? And I think when we first started Kiss the Ground in 2013, there was like 3 organizations in the US that were talking about regenerative agriculture. And now I think there's 600 organizations and companies talking about regenerative agriculture. So it's a massive boom of this aspirational future of our food system. And I think, a big part of it is, consumer pressure. I think before there was even a regenerative label on the market, there was Whole Foods said that the #1 requested, food preference was regenerative agriculture coming into Whole Foods. And that's a very one small privileged market, but it definitely is indicative of, if people are saying they want this, there becomes this, ripple throughout the whole supply chain.
Okay, final words. By embracing regenerative agriculture, we can restore soil health, enhance biodiversity, mitigate climate change, and promote sustainable food production. And what a powerful climate solution. Before we end, I want to remind everybody to check out Kiss the Ground website for more information. Visit rare.org to learn more about Lands for Life program. Follow up on social media, social handles in the chat, I guess, Steph. and sign up for Rare's e-updates so you don't miss our conversations. Ryland, it was great having this conversation with you. I really connect on your philosophy about generosity, love, and gratitude, and how these values are essential for creating positive change. Thank you so much, Ryland, and thank you, all of you, for joining today. Have a great rest of your day.
Monica, thank you so much for this conversation. It's been an honor to be with you and to be with all of you. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. And yeah, may we remember to be in our hearts and love each other and allow that to guide the actions of our lives. And hopefully those actions are regenerative. And I've been sharing, just as one final thought, you know, why I'm optimistic is because love and regeneration are perennial truths. And nature inherently is regenerative, and at the core of all human beings, we are love. And so if we can connect to those essential truths, you know, we're going to be all right. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryland. Thank you, everybody. Goodbye.